It's my haircut day, so I'm gonna start looking a lot better for you guys. Just wait until you see it. It's gonna be pretty cool. I think I'm gonna get like a box shape. I had to make this episode and I'm gonna drop it like as soon as possible. I'm getting a lot of comments when it comes to Tucker Carlson. And I see a lot of people defending Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, and I have yet to understand what is so awe-inspiring about Tucker Carlson and what Candace Owens are doing. I mean, if we're being serious here, RFK or whatever his name is, what's his name? RFK Jr., that guy who the guy who was gonna run, who has a really, raspy voice. I mean, he's just as much of a conspiracy theorist and just as good as them. He went after the pharmaceutical companies. If anything, RFK is more ambitious. He's going after something that really does affect us. I mean, if you look at the lobbying groups and you stop just staring at AIPAC, what you'll notice if you do a little bit of research for just a moment is that AIPAC is not the most influential lobbyist group. That's a fact. I'll say it again. AIPAC is not the most influential lobbyist group. Not only that, but they also do not fork up the most amount of money. So it's not to say that Israel's not a threat. They very well could be. I told you guys, I'm not like a freaking Jewish spy. I'm not getting anything. I wish I was getting paid to say this, but I'm not. I'm still poor. Even so, the kind of stuff that Tucker and Carlson are saying about Israel demands concrete evidence. Did you guys ever take any kind of criminal justice class in college where you learned different levels of investigations and different like inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, abductive reasoning, preponderance of the evidence? You have a case that's beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, all that kind of stuff to do with investigations. Do you guys recall any of that? People can't just go around calling widows liars and psychopaths and Israeli spies who, colluded to killing her spouse without concrete evidence. You have to have facts on hand. The way investigations are done in law enforcement is they are done somewhat quietly, because that's the proper way to do it. If you're going to attempt to convict someone of some kind of crime and make sure that they don't get off on it. I got a text from my job and I had to take a look, but I was being safe. I just glanced for a moment, then I had to pause and reflect on it. Okay, so I wasn't texting or nothing. All right? Now, back to where I was, and we were talking about different levels of evidence. So there are certain policies that we make in America. In order to make the policies that we make, I think the most people with any kind of reasonable outlook on this would say if you are going to enact any kind of law, it should be backed perhaps by statistics and some kind of evidence. If I want to make a law that prevents people from being able to purchase or acquire bump stocks, well, I'm going to use some amount of evidence as to that reason why. What would that evidence be? Well, that evidence would be statistics about mass shootings, and I would want to show how many people die with mass shootings with killers that have bumper stocks versus killers who do not have bumper stocks. So I would let the evidence inform my policy. Now, if I'm going to go around and I'm going to say, for example, well, my wife is cheating on me. My wife is being unfaithful. These are claims. Claims demand evidence. I am not just going to go around to random family members, to random friends, just saying my wife is cheating on me. You see, I'm not in a position of knowledge. I do not know whether my wife is cheating on me or not. I have a perhaps reasonable suspicion, but there are things that have to happen for me to have reasonable suspicion, because there is unreasonable suspicion. For example, if my wife, let's say she goes to lunch with a coworker she's been working with for years, and she goes to lunch with him about once a month, and this coworker happens to be a male. Nothing has ever happened between them. No rumors have come about. It's not like they hang out all the time. On the occasion, because they're co-workers, once a month they'll sit down for a lunch. I would argue that I don't have reasonable suspicion. If I was to go and have a coffee with a female co-worker once a month and that was it, we're not texting all the time, we're not Snapchatting, nothing crazy has happened. We just simply go out to coffee about once a month. She is my co-worker. I've showed no signs of unfaithfulness. Would I have reasonable suspicion? I think not. The scenario in which I would have reasonable suspicion is if my wife was going out once a month with this person on a coffee date, and she was also texting him. Let's say she also followed him on Instagram, and let's say I've seen them before hugging. All right, now some of you are still saying, well, your example's not the best, but I think you're within reason to be suspicious. I think you have reasonable suspicion. Now, what I have to start doing is I have to start gathering evidence as to why this is occurring. The evidence would be the texts. The texts would be evidence showing that something might be happening. Even though the text might not specifically tell me that I am being cheated on, it's going to justify the suspicions that I have and the decisions that I might make from my suspicions. Now, I'm going to investigate further, and I'm going to maybe try to get video evidence. Video evidence would be good evidence. If I could have video evidence of my wife kissing this person or being physically flirtatious with this person, well, that's just more evidence for my case. But evidence doesn't always lead to a conviction. You see? Now, there are, how would I say this? Okay, I'll go with this. Evidence doesn't always lead to a conviction. Sometimes what happens is the evidence that you have is correlative, but it does not show a causation. Even though it's relevant to your reasonable suspicion, and you've built a pretty decent case, but when it comes down to it, and it comes to you showing beyond a shadow of a doubt or a reasonable doubt that this evidence shows what your claim is or what you're trying to convict this person of. This is so difficult. But the evidence actually has to show in order for you to get some kind of conviction. Now, here's my argument. That's the way that we should think about the process by which we start accusing people of certain things. It is such a liberal take. This is how liberals do things. Like the whole movement about believe all women. Believe all women. It's not to say that there isn't, reasonable suspicion. It's so hard and difficult to put into words, but I'll just do it. It's not to say that there isn't reasonable suspicion as to believe women. That's not what I'm saying. There are good reasons why we should automatically make women feel as if we believe them during their case. And there's good reason why we should investigate thoroughly and attempt to make sure that there is validity to the woman's claim. But it's a whole other thing to actually think that I'm going to get a conviction without showing concrete evidence. I can believe the woman all I want, but I have to show concrete evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that something did occur. These things are incredibly important. Liberals will go around saying something like, believe all women. And then you say, hey, the evidence is not adding up. Even if they did have intimacy, even if they were familiar with each other, the evidence is not adding up. It wasn't his sperm in her, perhaps. Perhaps it's just a difficult case. But there's all kinds of reasons for why the evidence doesn't always add up to a conviction. And I want to caution you about this. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Candace and Tucker yet are directly lying to you, but they are misleading you if they are making claims without substantial evidence. You need to show me that AIPAC is the most influential lobbyist group if you're going to say that they are the biggest threat to our nation. We both know, if you do any amount of research, that the AIPAC lobbyist group is not the most influential lobbyist group in America. They're actually below quite a few other lobbying groups. Now, I agree with you that there is evidence and you should have reasonable suspicion. You have enough for reasonable suspicion. Why is this little country in the Middle East so gosh dang influential? What in the world? And why are we so closely allied with them and spending so much money on their wars? And why are we sending them our military equipment and blah, blah, blah? Why aren't we doing that for every other nation? So we have reasonable suspicion. I'm going to argue that that's all that Tucker and Candace has, is a reasonable suspicion. What's even worse is when it comes to Charlie Kirk's case, they don't even have reasonable suspicion. They don't. You would have to tell me that what everyone saw the day that Charlie Kirk was shot is not true. The eyewitness testimonies about what happened to Charlie Kirk wasn't true. The ballistics ran are fabricated and not true. The person who said that was gonna kill him did not do it, and that was all a ploy, and the Jews set that all up. That is just not realistic. You don't even have reasonable suspicion. I would like to see concrete evidence, not just weird freaking shadows. Stop, man. Not just weird freaking shadows. I would like to see concrete evidence as to why you think you should have a reasonable suspicion that Charlie Kirk was not shot by some random trans wannabe kid. Where's the evidence? We as conservatives have to demand evidence. We also have to demand evidence-based policies. That's what separates us from liberals. We as conservatives or Republicans or even libertarians cannot just go about saying that men are women. That's crazy. That is just not how that works. We all know that, don't we? There's no amount of evidence that you can show that is going to support your claim that a man can become a woman. Why? Because we have scientific backing that shows that chromosomes decides both gender and sex. Start demanding evidence from these people. Conspiracy theories are fun. They're fun to listen to, but there is a certain manner at which you go about investigating. The way that Candace is going about investigating this case is wrong. It's hurtful to Erica's children. It is hurtful to Erica. To do what she's doing to Erica, she needs evidence beyond a shadow of a doubt that's what she's saying is true. Instead, we have I don't know, but I know, or something like that. What in the freaking world? Guys, come on now. There are some incredible speakers that do rigorous thinking. And I'm going to name them right now. These are people who understand how to think logically, and they will lead you through their logical reasoning to come to the conclusion that they do. And at the end of it, you'll be able to look at the evidence and see why. And it's not going to end with, I know. It's not going to end like that, or I don't know. No, it's going to be actual evidence. Here are some people who know how to actually investigate properly and who know a little bit about philosophy, so their arguments actually make sense at the end of the day. Trent Horn, even Matt Dillahunty, Christopher Hitchens, William Lane Craig, Richard Swinburne, John Lennox, Richard Dawkins, except for his whole aliens thing was a little bit, his aliens thing was a little bit wild. But these are some names of people who think rigorously and who debate rigorous topics. The levels at which they debate their topics in the evidence for their viewpoints is miles above what you're going to hear from freaking Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. They're not doing real investigative work. They're doing no, and no, or I don't know. That's what they're doing. Another point I gotta touch on is this whole idea that you think that as individuals that we don't have to attempt to control what happens within our circle of influence or within our society. Once upon a time in society, homosexuals used to say, well, I just want to have gay fornication in my home. That's all I want. I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone. Stop trying to arrest me in my home for doing my homosexual acts. That's what we said, right? Right? That's where it stops, right? Right there. Nope, that's not where it stops. Now we got a whole alphabet soup. LGBTQI plus T. Frick, I already said LGBT. Oh, shoot. I get my letters mixed up. There's a lot of them. We all know there is, all right? Now we have an entire movement for that. Now there's gay marriage. Now there's transgenders. Now, the most liberal states are attempting to actually trans your kids. How could this have happened? How this happens is by sheepish behavior of people within a society. We do have to control what happens outside of us. We have to keep our eye on these things. Likewise, when it comes to foreign affairs, it is just basic common sense that we also have to control what happens outside of America. We have to keep an eye on that. It used to be that, what is Hitler doing? So what? He's gotten a few Polish, a few Jews, and he's killing some other people. He's doing some crazy oppressive crap to his people, and we're just not going to get involved. We're just going to kind of let that be as is, and then, he killed a shit ton of people, and then he started trying to expand, and all of a sudden we went, oh, whoa, wow, that's a lot of people dead. Maybe we should do something. Maybe now is the point we do something, and we had to enter that war so our moron-ass allies could actually win the conflict. All right. This idea that you guys have that we should not be involved in any kind of foreign conflicts is crazy. Of course we should. We need to be involved as far as making sure that we have control over certain shipping routes, to make sure that we're getting the better deals on resources, and to make sure that when it is time to hit our enemies, we can do it effectively and we can defend ourselves. That's just basic. At the basic level, just like I told you guys last episode, it is just common sense for people, especially in the tribal era, different tribes in different villages, different locations, they understood that they had to have some kind of influence outside of their tribe. They understood that if they heard rumors about 3 tribes grouping up who absolutely hated them, that they needed to be proactive about what they were going to do in the hopes of being able to survive. That was just basic common sense. We are so sheltered in America, and it has been such a long time. Thank God our ancestors weren't freaking sheep like so many people are today. Thank God that people were literally afraid for a land invasion of America because our ancestors were not sheep, and they were just as ready to fight as the military force. Because of that, we are so sheltered and so soft that we've really forgotten that it is actually a violent world, and violence gets results. It is good on the occasion to enact a little bit of freaking violence. You have to. We have to enact violence within our domestic institutions. Law enforcement has to enact violence. They do. Do they not? Corporations have to enact consequences. Let's call that our version of violence. There has to be an action and then a consequence. Depending on the institution and the circumstance, it may not get to violence, but a consequence is typically uncomfortable, I would say. In the light that we're talking about it, you've done something. What I'm saying here is you've done something wrong. Something will happen to you. You want to cause harm to me. I'm going to be proactive and make sure that something happens to you. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, we got to tackle this next. If you voted for Trump and you thought when Trump was sitting there on stage spouting about no new wars that he actually meant that there would be no new conflicts, that you took him at face value and you voted for him based off of that, either you're lying or you're a sheep. Yup, I said it. Trump is not the kind of person that you think that you're going to be able to predict from day to day. That's not how he worked. If you had any level of common sense, you would have known that you're not voting for someone who's just freaking predictable. Nuh-uh. That's not who we're playing with here. Trump has an ego. Trump has an agenda. Luckily for us, that agenda oftentimes aligns with our individual interests and America's interests. But let's not make any mistake. We all know everyone's got an agenda. Trump has got his agenda. For you to really think that Trump wasn't going to switch up at all, and that Trump was just going to do every little single thing that he spouted off on stage, then you're a freaking fool. Then you're a fool. There are a lot of evangelical, super Christian conservatives mad at Trump about abortion right now, and they voted for Trump. Well, they're fools. Just like you are. If you really thought that Trump was going to get into no conflict and you voted for him, well, then you're a fool. Unless I'm misunderstanding you and you're just upset and you're just disappointed. But you're going to continue on and move on and vote with us so we can actually have the wins. Okay, then you're fine. But if you're these people saying that the Republican Party is so gosh dang corrupt because the leader of the group, Trump, is pro-Israel and went into a conflict which any commonsensical person could have predicted he would. Whoa! Oh my gosh, how could this have happened? Whoa, Trump didn't do what we thought he was gonna do. Trump didn't do exactly what I told him to. Shut up, man! Like, shut up! Of course he freaking didn't. Trump is not doing every single little thing that any of us wants him to do. And you know what? Some of us had common sense, and so we're just not surprised, and we'll move on. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. Stop. You're not finessing me here. I see right through you. You've bought so hard into this whole Israel AIPAC crap that is actually the reason why you hate Trump and why you think the Republican Party is corrupt. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party both support multiple foreign nations. They're active in Ukraine right now. Well, why? Why? I mean, I thought we only supported Israel. Why are we active in Ukraine? Why did we go into Afghanistan? Why did we go into Pakistan? I thought we were just, pro-Israel. Well, then you continue on and you say, no, we're just warmongers. All we care about is foreign affairs and supporting foreign nations, and that's why they're corrupt. Well, you got some reasonable suspicion there. I can't say that they're not corrupt, because some of the things that we do, the reasons we do it, aren't always justifiable. That's for sure. That's for sure. But if you think you're more moral than the people who act, even though the actions that they take are imperfect, if you think you're more moral because you're okay with being a bystander and doing nothing and supporting no one as, 600 million people starve, 600 million children freaking get abused, 600 million children have no future. If you think you're more moral because you can just sleep at night and be a bystander as those things happen, and that makes you a better person, well, you're not. You're not. Get that out of your head right now. Just because you're a do-nothinger and someone is a do-somethinger does not mean that you're more moral. That's where I'll leave this episode for today. Stop thinking that you're more moral than everyone else around you. Stop thinking that inaction is more moral than action. That's not always the case. Let's argue about it. Let's talk about it. But stop thinking the default position for morality is do nothing. Stand by and do nothing. These European nations that do nothing and stand by are not more moral than us. They're just do-nothingers. I'll leave it there. I'll leave that there for now. Go ahead, comment some more. I keep making episodes. Go ahead.